You're watching The Ready Writer, a show where I get to speak to writers of all different genres, mediums, and experiences. The Ready Writer. Are you ready? Hello and welcome. I hope you're ready for another episode of The Ready Writer. Today's guest, we have Peggy Alberda. She is the author of Hugo Makes Bread with Granddad. Let's take a listen at our interview we had together. So my first question is, have you always aspired to be an author?
No, not at all. It was quite a surprise to me, actually. I did for the past 20 years write Bible studies every week for multiple age groups from 4 years old to adult. And I did that as part of my work for about 20 years. But I did have the thought, maybe I should publish these someday, which I think publishing is the hardest part of writing a book. And I don't know if I'll ever have the energy to add that in. But really, no, it wasn't a dream of mine at all. It just sort of happened.
So what then inspired you, or did someone talk to you and say something, or did it just come up? How did you start publishing?
Well, the story just sort of came out of me one day. Like in December of last year, I said to my husband, I feel like I'm supposed to write a children's story. And he said to me, you keep saying that. Why don't you just do it? And I said, I do? Like, I didn't even realize that I was saying this. And I said, I can't because I don't know how. I don't know the first place to start to write a book. So again, put it away. And one day in January last year, I just had this overwhelming feeling of it's time to write the story. So I grabbed my computer, I sat down and I looked at a blank screen. And I'm like, what am I doing? I don't have a story. So I thought, well, I'll make a list of some things I have knowledge of. And one of the things was baking bread. And it was just like a light went on, like, this is it. And like I wrote the title first. How weird is that? I just wrote Hugo Makes Bread with Granddad. And I thought, well, that might not end up being the title, but it was on my paper. And I'm looking at that going, Hugo, where did that come from? And then I just wrote the story. Like I sat there for like 3 hours and it just sort of came out of me. And meanwhile, my husband came home. And when I was done, I said, I think I just wrote a children's story. Just now? I said, yeah. So I read it to him. And my husband's a writer. And he said, that's really good. And I was like, it is? You know, and then I read the book and I'm like, I can't believe I wrote this. It just sort of came out. So then, you know, it just sat in my computer. I read it to my daughter. I read it to my son. And they were really encouraging too. And my husband just kept saying to me, I want you to publish that book. And I'm going, no, I'm not going to publish this book. I don't have a publisher that would want it because I'm a nobody. You know, I've never done this before. And if I have to self-publish, it's not going to happen. I had no interest. I had no knowledge. And I had no interest in learning it. So I said, I'm not doing that. I said that multiple times. And then I found this self-publishing lady on a Facebook. Her name is Stacy Bauer, and she is this powerhouse. Like she just goes crazy. She just writes and publishes and writes and publishes and helps others along the way. So I talked with her and she kind of gave me some pointers on how to get started. And I did a couple things, but I still wasn't publishing. It just was overwhelming how to publish. If you look it up online, it's so overwhelming. And so I just sort of started dabbling in it, learning. I thought I was just learning. And all of a sudden I realized I'm like knee deep in this thing. I guess I didn't know really how to self-publish and I didn't realize I was doing it. So here I am learning to self-publish. And I think the biggest decision for me about self-publishing was trying to find a self-publishing company that would print it for me. I had worked with one for quite a while, and then I decided this isn't what I want. I needed my book to look really like something you'd find at Barnes and Noble on the shelf. I didn't want it to be a a thin stapled little paperback. I wanted it to be like a beautiful, well done book. And a lot of those places just want to turn them out really quick. And I didn't want that. I wanted one that when you held it, it had substance, that it was perfectly bound, all those things. So that took me a long time. I researched morning, noon, and night for the longest time. And finally came up with one that I felt like they're going to produce a really high quality book. And they've been really, really good to work with. So I went with them. But then there's these like positions that you have to know something about in self-publishing. And I didn't know anything about them. Well, first off, I had to find an illustrator. And I found this wonderful, wonderful woman. Her name is Mary Coons. She's out of Indianapolis. And the first time I called her, we completely clicked, because I did an old-fashioned homespun, cozy, warm kind of a children's book. And that's the way she illustrates. Like, I really wanted them to be hand-on, full of detail, full of color. Before we talked for 5 minutes, this lady was saying, I want to do this book. I want to do this book. And she ended up doing the book. Now we're great friends, you know, and she actually came to my house. I'm about 2 hours from her house 2 times last summer to just bring me sketches and, you know, get to know each other and look at these and brainstorm. It just was super fun, super fun. So she's amazing, Mary Coons. My daughter is a writer, and she edited the book for me. She wrote my bio, she wrote the summary, and she even continues to write or help me write if I need newspaper articles. So she's been really instrumental. And then a dear friend of mine, Sue Britton, she owns Britton Marketing in Fort Wayne. She offered to help me with layout and formatting and uploading. And I didn't know anything about that stuff. I didn't even know what it meant. And so she had me over to her house. Here we were in our masks, you know, looking over the computer. And she's like, well, we could put this here, or do you like it better over here? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting to be part of this, which a lot of people don't get to be. A lot of these self-publishing companies, you send them your manuscript and then you get a book. But I'm really detail-oriented. I wanted to have say about all that, because I wanted the book to be what I wanted it to be. I didn't want to be surprised. And Sue is very highly talented. So she, of course, had amazing ideas for how to do that. And so she kind of took it from there. And then when Book Baby got the book, all they had to do is print it. They're like, this is like ready to go to print. We don't have to do anything. So that was really, really good. So I think what I learned about self-publishing is there's a lot of different jobs within the one job. And if you can delegate and find people to do each of those jobs, it's going to equal a really good project. And it really did equal a good project. And since I have a passion for making homemade bread, I kind of liken it to making bread. Like when I'm going to cook, I pull out my ingredients, I put them on the counter, and every ingredient knows exactly what they're going to do to create bread. You leave one thing out, you're not going to get good bread. And so I feel like the people that came together to work on this publishing were all like high quality ingredients. When we put it together, you know, we got this amazing book. And if you do that with baking, you get this amazing product that you can eat that nourishes your family and brings warmth and coziness into your home. So it kind of just worked, you know. I still look at these books on my shelf and I think, how did those get there? This was like, when we started publishing these, till it was in my hands, was 9 months. And if you count when it was just sitting in my computer, it was 1 year. That's fast. It does fast. So yeah, I'm still, you know, I'm still kind of shocked that I did it. Real shocked.
So you've answered my next question, what was your process like? But was there anything, a part of the process that made you go, I didn't realize this was a part of publishing a book? Because usually when you look at a book, you read it and you don't know the backstory behind how it got in your hands.
Sure.
So what was something about the publishing process that took you off guard?
All of it. Like, I didn't know what it meant. Like, when my husband's like, well, you could self-publish, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, that is just so much work. And, you know, it wasn't as much work as I thought it was going to be, but it still was a lot of work. Had I done all the parts that other people I hired to do parts, you know, it would have been a little bit more. The shocking thing is that actually somebody that has no knowledge of it can do it. Because I did it. If I did it, anybody can do it. Because I'm not that kind of a person. You know what I mean? I'm like, I own a Christian dance ministry, have for 33 years, and I'm more in the dance and the creative arts and stuff. But to sit down and learn publishing and editing and all that, it's not really for me. But it was, I guess, because I have a book. Yeah.
So Hugo Makes Bread with Grandpa. What is it? Is it more than just what the title says? What's the plot, and what is the age bracket group?
Well, I have a niece that is 18 months old, and she gets that book and brings it to her mommy and says, read often. I didn't think it was for kids that young, but the pictures are so detailed and so colorful that I think it captivated her, even though she doesn't have full understanding of what it's about. So I think basically it's probably from like 4 to maybe like 9 in that age. But, you know, really, the adults that have read it are like, this is such a delightful book. I just love this story, because it really does bring in the element of home and warmth and the fireplace in the background and the steam coming up from the bread, and, you know, the loving hands of the grandparents just guiding this little 4-year-old through. So basically it's a picture of a day in our home. This is not unusual for what takes place around here with our grandkids. As I hired the illustrator, I had her like make the grandparents' home like it's my home in cartoon. My grandchildren's home is in the book. It's their home. It's our home. It's their home. At the beginning, it shows Hugo and his mommy walking from their home down a path and onto the next page. I'll show you that next page. They're coming here. Now, this is before there's any words. So that's the beginning. So we taught, well, let me go back to this. My husband has made bread since he was 14 and he's 63. He's always made it. I started as a teenager as well. And we've been married 43 years and we don't buy bread. He either makes it or I make it. I make a sourdough bread. He makes a whole wheat honey bread. And that's kind of in the story too. So Granddad invites Hugo to make bread with him that day. And Hugo's like, sure, Granddad, I'll help you. So he climbs up on his step stool and the story's told through Hugo's eyes. So it's real cute because it's the 4-year-old thinking. And so they do the stages of the bread throughout the day. The biggest problem in the story is that 4-year-old Hugo doesn't want to take his nap. He's making bread with Granddad. He can't go take a nap. So Hugo discovers the joy of the accomplishment of doing something big if you stay focused. And it builds confidence in him that he can actually do something. He's really still kind of a baby, but he can do something with the help of a loved one. And the cherry on top is that Hugo's grandparents express to him verbally how proud of him they are. And that just warms Hugo's heart, and just, it's a whole new feeling that he's never had in his life before. He did something great and he's been recognized for it and encouraged. And he goes to bed feeling this is just the greatest thing that could ever happen. You know, the little guy had a good day, you know, and he learned a lot. So that's kind of fun. That you see the grandparents proud, you see him proud of himself, you know, they're sharing their bread. One point I wanted to make about the babies reading the book, like for the little siblings, toddlers that sit and listen with the rest of the family, there is something for them. I have a little dog, her name is Lulu, and she's brown and she's curly. And She's in the book on almost every page, but we don't talk about her. But she's looking around the corner of the table. She's like up to the chair, you know, so that that baby in the family can say, puppy, puppy. You know how they'll do that. You know, that might be all they're looking for, but she's there. And she's a real dog. So she's become our logo, and she's going to probably be in more books. But here's our little logo of.
Oh, wow. What a cutie.
Yeah. Yeah, she's really, really cutie. So we have a little something for everybody. And in the very back of the book, I created a recipe for the book that only takes 3 hours from start till you're eating it. And, you know, the sourdough bread I make, 2 days. You know, it's more involved. But this particular loaf is very good. It makes 2 loaves. And you can make it in 3 hours. You know, it takes that long sometimes to make dinner. So I think that that's encouraging. My whole desire is to see people make bread in their homes, to get the kids involved, to share those kind of old-fashioned, homespun, love-inducing moments together while you're creating something that'll nourish your family. I've taught a sourdough bread class a couple of years ago, and I just love that. And one of the gals makes it every single day, and she's thanked me multiple times and says, thank you for teaching me how to make bread. It's changed my life. I just really don't think what you buy in the grocery store that they call bread is anything like homemade. Yeah.
Well, you have definitely made me hungry for homemade bread.
You'll have to get the book and make the bread in the back. 3 hours.
So you've already told me what inspired your book, the fact that you make bread. So because this is basically a new book, I'm assuming you're focusing on this book so much, but by any chance, are you thinking of a second book, or are you in the process of a book, or you're just mainly focused on this right now?
Well, like you, I am trying to learn how to market my book. I just checked in last week to see how it was doing with my publishing company, and they said, your book is doing very well. Like, she said it 4 times. It's only been out 3 weeks, and it's really moving, which is surprising to me. It's just so exciting, you know. I just hope it continues. Mm-hmm. And more than selling books, that to me doesn't mean nearly as much as thinking of these little children snuggled up with their mom or dad or grandparents, and they're reading this story and they're looking at these pictures, taking them to a time when things are a little more settled and secure. Like, our world is sort of shaken right now. And I think to go into a little imaginary story that you can kind of recreate in your kitchen, I think it's important for a time like this. And I have gotten some pictures of children reading with their parents and then in the kitchen with their hands in the dough. And, you know, it just does something to me. It does more to me than thinking that the book is selling. But if it's selling, that means that's happening. And it's just important to me. And I can't even tell you why it's so important to me that people go back to some of these roots that really bind a family together and nourish them. So yes, I'm busy marketing and learning that. That's a whole nother thing to learn. But what my heart's desire is to make a series of Hugo books. I have all kinds of ideas, and I would just love to, you know, have a series, because Hugo's got parents that love him, grandparents that love him, and they're all willing to teach him things. And just think of the journeys that he can go on and the things he can learn and share. And he has a little sister, and I'm hoping to bring her in. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a series of Hugo books, as well as a series of his sister's book.
Yeah.
But something that I don't know when you'll be able to do it, but 2 marketing ideas that came into my head for you. The first one is, whenever it's safe, when you have a book signing, bring homemade bread and put that on your flyer. You know, meet the author of Hugo Makes Bread with Granddad, and get some homemade, you know, sourdough bread or whatever you make, probably the recipe in the back of the book. And the second idea is, if you're safe with, well, I don't know that you would be able to do it being that it's 3 hours, but do well, I don't think you could do it via Zoom, but when it's safe again, because you said you've had baking classes in the past, make it open and say, hey, bring your children. We'll teach you how to make a 3-hour homemade bread. And then afterwards you can get a book and I'll sign it, blah, 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 blah.
Oh,
So
that's
I
great.
think that that would be a great idea, because it's funny because I've stopped eating bread only because I know for the most part, the easiest bread takes 2 to 3 ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go to the store, most of them have 20 ingredients, and you're like, what is all of this in here? And even the organic sometimes has a lot of ingredients. And recently I've been like, I want to learn how to make bread, because it take,
Oh,
it shouldn't, I mean, I know, I guess most of those ingredients in there to preserve it so it lasts longer on the shelf. But I'm like, if 2 or 3 ingredients, it shouldn't be that difficult. So
the most basic bread. Now, this one in the book has a few other ingredients because I wrote the book before the recipe. I wrote the book according to my husband's bread, because the kids always call it granddad bread, and this was about granddad. And there's oats and honey, which you don't have to have in bread. Those are little extra additions. And then what I did is I took a really simple white bread recipe and I changed it to add the whole wheat flour. Well, I guess I said they could use any flour. Instead of using sugar, we used honey, and instead of using all flour, we used some oats, So I changed it, and then I made it a few times to make sure that it worked. But I've been baking my whole life, so I kind of know what's going to work and what's not going to work. Yeah, it's a very good bread. In fact, the first 2 little boys that got my book, and here it is, people are in quarantine. Their mom got the book as a gift. They went to Kroger, they bought the yeast, they went home, they made the bread, and then they ate the bread. And it was such a wonderful experience for them that the next day they went back to Kroger, got more yeast, went home, make more bread, and then gave it away as gifts. So I felt like it was successful and that worked. That's what I want to see. I want to see those little hands and see the smiles on their faces, I hope you do make some bread. It's just, I don't know, even when it's rising, it gives your home a different feeling. Like when that bread is in a warm place rising under the towel and you see it getting bigger, it's like when there's a baby sleeping in your house, sort of, and you have that special feeling like that there's that special thing happening in our home,
Right.
So yeah, you need to make the one in the back first because it's so simple. If you ever want to learn to make sourdough, I'll teach you. It's amazing. And again, simple. It's all time. It's all waiting, really. Right. My hands-on time with my bread is probably 20 minutes. Just a lot of waiting. And we all have time right now.
Yes, we do. So my last question for you is the fun question I ask. So whether they be dead or alive, if there's an author out there that inspires you and you could have the chance to co-write a book with them, who would it be and why?
I'm going to have to say E.B. White. Charlotte's Web is an amazing book. It's a story we can all relate to, just about a farm family, just home, kids, and they're just going through their daily life of what they do. And then E.B. White, touches it with his magic wand and it gets magical. And as we watch that, we think, there's so much value in life. Like Fern wanted to save that little baby pig that his dad was going to destroy because it was the runt. She saw value in his life. And then in the book, we see there is value in Hugo's life and there's value in Charlotte's life, just a spider. And, there's even value in the rat named Templeton. I just love how he brought life to those characters in such a way. And he made it all sparkle a little more than real life for us. And I really like that.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch another episode of The Ready Writer. To our guest, our author, Peggy Alberda, we want to thank you for taking the time for sharing your journey and your story with us. And to the audience watching, to the viewers, thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Have a great day.